Alright, so this video is going to take a look at Nuke's 3D system, specifically with dealing with shots that involve some Z-depth movement in it, and how we can leverage Nuke's 3D system to really help us out. So, a few years ago, it was probably okay if you were a compositor and you really didn't understand 3D at all. And in fact, when I started as a compositor, I knew very little about 3D. But over time, I began to realize how beneficial it was for me to really understand, what 3D is capable of in a compositing context. So, the shot that we're going to look at is this thing that I just shot myself, and it looks very goofy and kind of silly, but actually it's based on the ending of a movie I worked on, and the shot was of kind of like the main character, the main bad guy, and it started up on her face, and then the camera pulled back and turned as it was pulling back. And as the camera was pulling back, they wanted a little pool of blood to appear behind the bad guy's head to make it look, like it was dead. And the shot was originally at night, and it was in a forest, and it was very dark, and a lot of the compositors were having trouble because the area by the actress's head was it was badly lit, and there it was in silhouette, and there wasn't much to track. So we want to be able to track in some blood, and so I just sort of shot this with my camera, and the movement is very reminiscent, and the whole setup is reminiscent to the kind of the scene that I was working on for the movie. So this is like a perfect situation. We could try to do like 2D tracks, get Nuke's 2D tracker in there, but this is like an ideal situation to use Nuke's camera tracker. And to be honest, if you were working on a movie, the tracking department would take this shot and they would track it for you, and they would give you a camera track, probably with really nice geometry lined up with everything. But if you're working at a smaller shop, or if you're working and maybe they didn't budget this shot for 2D, maybe they didn't budget any 3D for this shot. And so, that's happened to me like a million times where I've gotten a shot and, they didn't budget any time for camera tracking. They thought it was just going to be a comp shot, but it would have benefited tremendously if I would have had a track. So I would really highly recommend, if you're a compositor, that you learn 3D camera tracking on your own, and you're able to use whatever software package your studio uses, whether it's Synthize or PF Track or 3D Equalizer. I really, really highly recommend that, so that you can jump on a box, or maybe get a license put on your machine, so that you can just jump in and track a shot if you need to. Now, if you're not able to do that, then at least Nuke comes with a pretty good auto tracker. And this shot is going to be very easy for Nuke's auto tracker to track. It's obviously a lot harder if you have actors moving around in your scene, or if the camera's moving in a real wild fashion. So I'm just going to drop down Nuke's camera tracker, and I'm just going to track the features over here. And this will take a minute to go through, so I'll probably edit the video and so that it'll just sort of fly by. All right, so the track is finished, and when you're done, you'll see like the path of the tracks, and you can select these, and you can delete any if you think that they're not tracking properly. But you pretty much just walk down this list. So I did the track features. Now I'm going to click solve the camera, and it's going to be able to do this one fairly quickly. And so now the camera has been solved, and you can see that some of the trackers it likes, and some of it it's not so crazy about. Some of them are red, and it thinks that the error rate is a bit too high on these ones. But I'm just going to let this go. I'm not going to spend too much time tweaking or fine-tuning too much stuff. You can delete these if you go to refine, and you can just delete rejected tracks. But now I'm going to go here. I'm going to create a camera, and this camera is linked to this camera tracker, so that if I go back and make any of my changes in my camera tracker, that'll be reflected onto the camera. And then I'm going to create the tracking points. And what the tracking points do is it takes these 2D points that it was able to track, and now it's going to create 3D points for where that is in the 3D scene. And over here it's a scene node, and I'm going to plug that into the camera, so the camera is going to be loaded into the scene. And so now if I look, you can see that the big problem that we have right now, we have a point cloud, and we have our camera, and if I look through the camera, this is going to be, a decent track. You can see the camera's moving, and you can kind of tell, that's like the bear, and then as it pulls back in the scene, you can kind of make out some parts. But the big problem with our scene right now is that the camera doesn't know that this was on the ground. It's trying to just sort of build the scene, and it doesn't know that the camera should be moving up. There's no orientation in the scene. It's kind of like when it's tracking, it's as if this is what Nuke sees when it's trying to put the scene together. So it knows that the points are traveling and it's moving around, but it doesn't know what's up or what's down, what's left or right. It just builds everything kind of relative to the camera. So what we need to do is give Nuke a clue as to where the ground plane is. And you don't have to do this. I mean, you could build your scene so that everything's kind of like the ground is flat, like over here. But that just makes things confusing, and if you can avoid that, you should. So I'm going to just go around, and the easiest way is you just select points that that are on the ground. You just hold down Shift and select, just on different parts of the ground, and then you right click, and I'm going to say ground plane set to selected. You get these purple dots appearing. It just lets you know that those are the points you've chosen to be on the ground plane. And now, when I look, you can see that the camera is now going up. And it's still not, maybe totally perfect. It looks like it's a little bit off to the side there. But it's getting the general motion. And it could be that maybe when I was lifting the camera up, it was sort of tilted a bit at an angle. I'll leave it for now. Now, what you can also do inside of Nuke, so this is a decent start, but what I'm going to do is drop down a node called the Point Cloud Generator. And versions of this tool existed before version 7, but it got a lot better in version 7. So you plug it into the source, and I'm going to plug it into, it needs a solved camera, which we have over here. And now I'm going to take the point cloud generator, and I'm going to click Analyze Sequence. And once I do that, it's going to go through and it's going to find the frames where it's going to basically create keyframes of what frames would be good to put keyframes on. And this shot is, again, it's pretty simple. I did a practice run on this before I recorded the podcast, and I know that it's going to work out pretty nicely. So this is just going to take just a few seconds for the analyzing to happen. And then once it's done, you'll see little blue ticks in your timeline. So it's sort of set up keyframes. But after that, now I'm going to click track points. And I may just edit the video here so that you don't have to wait. Yeah, it's going to take a minute to run through. So I'm going to make an edit here, and you'll be back and it'll be done. Alright, so the point cloud generator has finished up, and now what we'll see over here, I'm just going to home in on this a little bit. You're going to see that we have a very, very dense point cloud that really represents our scene. So you can see that there, and these red dots are just rejected points that the computer doesn't really trust. I'm just going to delete these guys. And there you can see the points that it was able to recreate. And the awesome thing is that it also colors these points so that we get a really, really good idea of what our scene looks like. So what I'm going to do now is I want to put a card so that I can put this little blood texture by the bear's head. So another thing that I can do with the point cloud generator is it can make geometry. And there's a lot of great videos on the Foundry's website that explain this feature, but we'll take a quick look at it here. It's not really that necessary because I have the point cloud and I kind of know where to put a card, but I'll just do this just so we can take a look at it. I'm just going to switch over and go to Vertex Selection. The only thing that I'm not crazy about is that all the colors kind of go away. I mean, you can see maybe a little bit of an outline here, but it can make it a little bit difficult to grab and to make sure you're grabbing the right, area of points. So I'm gonna, and you just hold down Shift and you can grab multiple points or make multiple selections. And so I have this over here, and I'm gonna click Create Group, and that's gonna group all my selected points into this group, and you can give it a name if you like. And now I'm going to go back up to node selection. And with this selected, I'm going to say bake selected groups to mesh. And now, oops, you can see over here I have this node, and when I look, I'm going to have a very, very dense point cloud. And it goes up because I guess I must have grabbed some of the bear's head. But now you can see where the ground is. And actually, my ground has not been too accurately placed. When I was picking my ground plane, it was close, but you can see that there's definitely like a bit of a curve to the ground plane over there. So I could project directly onto this, but the bear's head is kind of in the way. So I'm going to create a card, and I'm just going to use this geometry to help me line up my card. So I'm going to create a card, and I'll have the card just lay down flat on the ground, and then I'm just going to move it over here. And I'm going to just maybe slide it around like that. And now I just want to maybe rotate this just a little bit. Sorry, this is a bit boring, but I just want to make sure that's lined up fairly well with the ground, and it looks like it's not too bad. And I could just scale that in maybe a little bit. Okay. So now I have the card, and I want to project blood where the bear would be. So I'm just going to get a frame that's fairly close up, maybe somewhere around here. And I have this bloodstain texture. And I'm just going to, I want to line it up with my background. So I'm just gonna drop down to transform, and I'll move it, maybe put it over here somewhere. And in the merge node, I'm just gonna set it to multiply and turn on alpha masking so it doesn't get rid of all the others. And I can see here that it's making this a little bit darker. It's because these whites aren't totally white. If I take a reading of this and look down here, you can see that the whites are actually maybe 90% white. They're not 100% white. So I'm just going to drop down a grade node, and I'm going to set my white point to the sampled area, and that's going to make that area now white. And so now that black kind of stuff is gone. And maybe I'm just going to rotate this like that. I like these splatters maybe a little bit. Oops, don't want to skew it. That's one thing I find a bit fiddly with Nuke's transform gizmo. Sometimes I grab these edges and I end up skewing it. Maybe something like that. So now I need to project this onto my card. So in order to keep everything in the frame, what I'm going to do is just make a constant. And instead of having this on the background, just have a constant here, just so that, you know, this is what's going to get projected. And I just like doing that just so I can kind of see where it's going to go. I could project it right from the transform, but it's a bit hard to see because then I've moved it and repositioned it over here, so it's a bit hard to see. That's all. So now I'm going to get a project 3D node, plug this in as my texture. The camera has to be kind of locked on the frame I'm on right now. So I'm on frame 89. Switch that to global. And I'm going to get a frame hold. And I'm going to set this to frame 89. And then hook that in. And then hook that into the card. And then make a scanline renderer. Plug that in there. Get a camera again over here. And then gonna turn off the camera tracker, and so I just have the card over here. And actually I could probably, if I look at this, the card is fairly big. I could maybe just scale that down a little bit. So just move that there, and then just scale it kind of to the area that I need. So it's going to make it a little bit smaller. Like that. So now I have that, and that just makes the bounding box a bit smaller, and I think that makes it render faster. Not 100% sure because it's just rendering black, but I think if the bounding box is smaller, then it has less to calculate, and that's a good thing. And now I'm going to just get a merge and merge that back over top of the original over here. Set this to multiply, same as the merge over here, and set that to alpha masking. So now, if I look at this, that blood stain is going to be tracked in there. It'll be as accurate as the camera, as accurate as the camera is. If the camera's not accurate, then this won't line up. This will drift around. It's also a lot of people, when they first start using this, you have to keep in mind that where you place it in your scene is just as important as where or how good your camera is tracked. You could have a perfectly tracked camera, but if this isn't placed properly in your scene, then it's going to float, it's going to move around. So that's why I created the point cloud generator, so I could really tell for sure where my card should go. I can really clearly see it here, and so now I can tell that that's going to be lined up nicely there. So, I mean, we could stop the tutorial here, but wouldn't mind showing you maybe a couple other things. What you can do, because this was tracked in Nuke, we can look at our... where is it? Let's say I wanted to roto around the head. Let's say I wanted this blood to look like it was behind his head. And right now, obviously, it looks very flat because it's going over top of his head. We don't get any dimensionality there. So let's say we wanted this to look as if it was underneath his head. We could do something like project roto onto a card and use that as a mask. But that can get a little bit confusing sometimes if we need to make adjustments on it. But again, I use that technique all the time. But in this case, I want to show you something different. I want to show you project to 3D. Or sorry, what am I talking about? The Reconcile 3D node. Project to 3D. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because this was tracked in Nuke, I can look at these points over here, and if I select, say, this point here, and I right-click, I'm going to create an axis. And so that creates an axis node over here. And the axis node is going to tell me where in the position, like what position this is in 3D space. And then I'm going to make a Reconcile 3D node. And I'm going to hook that to the axis here. I'm going to hook that into, you need a solved camera. And I'm going to hook that into the image. And then I'm going to say create keyframes. And what that's going to do, that's going to generate a 2D path where that 3D point is. And you can see there's that path being created. And this should be very, very accurate. If I look over here, as that's traveling around, that should stay pretty locked on. If that was locked on properly in the 3D track, then this should be locked on just as well in the in this 2D path that it creates. And you can see it's locked on there really, really well. And so that's one point. And then I'm going to do that again. Gonna maybe grab this part of the ear over here, or maybe this one right here. And I'm gonna right click and create another axis. Basically just do the same thing. I want to have 2 points for 2-point tracking. So I'm gonna make another Reconcile 3D. You should also constantly be cleaning up your scripts and make sure that everything is kind of neat and clearly legible. I'm doing a horrible example for you guys if you're watching this right now. This is how you would not want it to be set up. So the axis is plugged into the Reconcile 3D. I'm going to click Create Keyframes, and now that path is going to be created where that tracker was over here. So, and the thing that's great about this is, number one, it's fast. Number two, it's accurate if your track is accurate. So if I'm looking at the source, you can see there that's going to be stuck to the side of his head. So I have these two paths. Now, Nuke's new tracker node, and this is just me, maybe if one of you are watching this and you know how to do this, I want to take the information here for this path and plug it into the tracker node, but I don't know how to copy the animation into a tracker node. So I'm not going to use the new tracker node. I'm going to hit X in my node graph, and I'm going to type out tracker 3 with a capital T, and this creates the old tracker node that was used in Nuke before Nuke 7. And now I'm going to load in, and I'm just going to copy the animation here and put that in here for my tracker 1. And then I'm going to just enable that one over here. And then for my Reconcile 3D over here, I'm going to copy this over there. Oops. Oh. Let's try it again. There we go. So what I've done, I'm going to turn that on. So I'm turning on the transform, rotation, and scale for all of these. And now over here in the transform tab, I have how this is going to be translating. So you can see there, I have that. So now, and the whole reason I copied this into here, because this node is now doing these calculations for how this is going to be rotating, scaling, and translating. So now I'm going to make a Roto Node. And the Roto Node, I'm going to do a very quick, ugly roto around the bear. Like so. Okay. And I'm also going to drop down a folder. I like making these folders inside of Nuke, so that, and that's where I'm going to attach this tracking data. So I'm just going to spit that out over here, and I'm just going to copy the translation. I'll make sure I have that selected so it doesn't get put on the root. And so that's going to go there. The rotation is going to get copied over here. The scale is going to get copied over here. And the center is going to get copied over here. So now, there's my Bezier. And now that Bezier should be tracked into place, which it is. So that's cool. So now in the merge node, I'm just going to grab a mask and plug that into the alpha. Or plug that alpha of the roto into here. And in the merge node, I'm just going to invert that. And obviously it looks horrible. I would need to add some softening to this. You know, a little bit of feathering, especially around the bloody areas. And obviously a lot more care would have to be taken than this quick example that I'm doing for you guys. But I'm just going to do something like that, and then I'm going to turn on motion blur on my mask. And I'm also going to go to the scanline renderer, and I'm going to turn on multi-sample and turn on this. And what this will do is it'll turn on motion blur for the blood. So the blood will get, there'll be some frames if there's any quick movement like there is here. That should create motion blur. Let's just look at that. 0 and 5. And I shouldn't really have to change the shutter, but I'm not getting the amount of motion blur that I would expect. Yeah, if I really crank it, you can start to see the shutter sample. What's going on here? There you can start to see the motion blur starting to kick in. So I shouldn't have to turn the shutter up so high for me to see motion blur, though. Something's a bit weird. So there you can see it there, and that's actually too much motion blur. Should actually be set to 0.5. The default is actually pretty physically correct, as far as I know. And now that roto is around its head, and it's going to be getting smaller, and it's going to be kind of shrinking away as it goes off into the distance there. And I may want to put on, I've seen people do this, like, I've never really liked Nuke's feathering. If I just go to feather and feather things here, I much prefer the look of putting like a blur behind it and blurring it over here. That seems to make it, to me anyways, to my eyes, it looks a little bit more natural and a little bit softer.